get to introduce Linda Reeves, who is a proud PFLAG mom, not just a PFLAG mom, but also like a board member and a founding member of our local chapter. She's also a licensed marriage and family therapist. She provides psychotherapy and intensive therapeutic retreats to LGBTQ individuals, couples, families, and partners of loved ones who are either transgender or gender non-binary. She has also obtained certification as a gender specialist by the World Professional Association for Transgender Health in their Global Education Institute. So that's WPATH GEI if you're into acronyms these days. Linda's also an adjunct professor at Antioch University. And she, in her spare time, has been writing a book for parents of transgender and gender expansive loved ones. And so knowing that Linda clearly has the credentials to be able to be helpful, supportive, I think in knowing her and the work that she does, some of her best qualities are that she's incredibly honest and vulnerable about either her own experiences, but also it makes her very empathetic to the community that she serves. The specificity with which she explains things to make it very clear, and how she's a person of her word. Like she actually is a person that you know is going to make things happen when she says it's good, when she signs up for something, or when makes a decision, it's gonna happen. So she's here tonight with us to help us with our workshop, the topic of how we're using mindfulness and meaning making to ease emotional discomfort. And I couldn't be happier that she's with us. So Linda, it's all yours.
Thank you. It's so nice, all the love that I get to feel here. Yeah, when I'm working with clients, they don't really give you that much feedback. So it's nice to hear so many kind words and to be appreciated for what we're going to talk about now. I have a lot of content that I want to share that I don't have memorized. So this is probably what we're going to need to do. Anyway, technical issues. And again, this happened once before at a workshop. So we get through it anyway. As Isabel said, I am the proud mother of a gay son. And he came out in 7th grade when, which is like maybe 15 years ago now, he's 30. And I was never a member of this club. I was not touched by these issues at all. And it really changed my life. And years later, when I went back to grad school, I had an opportunity to specialize my degree, and they offered a curriculum focused on LGBTQ studies. And I thought, what a perfect opportunity for me to learn more about my son's lived experience. So that really launched me on my path to becoming the person I am today. And when I learned about how heteronormative, and there's a lot of big words I'm going to say now, heteronormative, transphobic, homophobic, cisnormative our culture is, I, just became fiercely allied with the LGBT community in this feeling of wanting to educate and inform and fight for the rights of the LGBT community that were so under assault. So I launched an organization called the Prism Institute, and went to my son's school district and talked to the superintendent. And 2 weeks later, he had this executive director of student services call me and ask me to come in and train the counselors. So it was one of those situations where you have to be careful what you ask for, because I had this new knowledge and this fierce attitude, and they recognized that they really had never had this training. So this is kind of where the seeds of my passion and understanding began. And as I started to see clients and I did my training up at that Los Angeles LGBT Center. And then I worked at Paradigm Malibu, which is a residential facility for adolescents. And I started to see all of these issues just in plain view, and started to work with the families of the children who were struggling with identity stuff, that I just realized that I'd found my niche. So I really developed a practice focused exclusively on the LGBTQ community. And again, as I went on, I recognized that the transgender community was of specific interest to me, and the unique challenges and ways that there was a medical piece and a mental health piece, and all of this just really resonated with me. So I wanted to learn more about how to work with this population. And again, as Isabel said, became GEI certified by WPATH. So there's only about 3,500 medical and mental health professionals around the world who are WPATH certified. And we are required to do trainings every 2 years to stay certified. So if you are seeking therapists for yourself or for your loved ones, you can go to the WPATH.org website, and they will give you a list of people who are WPATH certified. So it is something for yourself or to pass along to someone that you might know in the future. Because having a therapist that does have knowledge on this topic is going to be so valuable to your loved one and for yourself. And I'm happy to provide referrals, depending upon what you might need as well. When Isabel talked about the book that I'm reading or writing, I am reading a good book too. It's called 4,000 Weeks, if anybody needs a good book referral. But this book that I'm writing was really born from this idea that I started to notice with my patients, was that when the transgender individual would come out, and I know Leo's got a situation where his father or one of his parents, actually, I think you said, is trans. So it's a little bit, you have to kind of turn things around for Leo's in your mind. But I noticed that oftentimes the parent is jumping in with both feet right away to do everything that they can to prop up and stabilize and make sure that their transgender non-binary child is doing well. And not all people that are coming out are struggling. I want to say that as a caveat, but a lot of times they need extra attention, right? Whether it's talking with the school or getting new wardrobe or changing hair or coming out to family or all the things, right? It's a lot of focus on the child. And what I noticed was that the parents really weren't giving themselves the love and attention and self-compassion that they deserved. And I really started to watch this and become extremely compassionate for the parents' journey as well, as the individual person that's transitioning. But the parent also undergoes a transition. And I'm going to just kind of go back and forth here just a little bit. Any transition serious enough to alter your definition of self will require not just small adjustments in your way of living and thinking, but a full-on metamorphosis. And it is true that parents also experience an emotional metamorphosis, right? They experience their own transition, because you're no longer the parent of a cisgender child. You're now the parent of a transgender or non-binary child. So you go through your own transition, you have your own coming out moments, right, with friends and families and colleagues and neighbors, because you're now explaining this other part of who you are and how this is affecting your family. And change is an event, but a transition is the process that you go through in response to the change. If you don't really focus on your own transition and give yourself space to move through all of the big emotions, then it's really just kind of like rearranging the furniture, right? No transition is really taking hold. And when we think about it, we're told from a very early age not to feel those. Don't cry, like don't act out. You're showing too much emotion. Like there's so many. Think about the messages that we get as children that kind of are teaching us not to feel our feelings. And that's something that, depending upon the household that you grew up in, the different socialization that you had, you may be more or less able to connect with the feelings that you're having. And one of the things that I noticed with, with people like yourselves is that they're really, really, really big feelings. And we're not used to maybe being so uh, emotional, so often of the time, but there's so much going on with our children that it's a whole new part of us that we kind of discover. And that's one of the things we're going to focus on today, is how to help you regulate and be in that place with those big emotions. And as a little background, and maybe something to kind of bolster you as we move into this, is if you think about it, you've probably been through a lot of these emotional transitions, these emotional metamorphoses yourselves over the years. Think about back when you were in school, right? You might have moved around to different schools. You certainly went from an elementary to a middle school to a high school. For those of you that went off to college, what a big step, leaving all the things that were familiar and forging a new path into a new, you know, uh, place, right? New people, new area, away from home. We've transitioned when we've gone into the workforce. We've transitioned, within the workforce in different jobs, and had to kind of reinvent ourselves in each of these situations to meet the challenge that we were facing. We've transitioned when we've gotten married. We transitioned our life again, rearranged all those parts of our life when we had children. We've transitioned when we've been divorced, on and on, right? So when we've lost a loved one, transitioned our life when we had to maybe start taking care of a parent. So the point of all of that is to remind you how resilient you really are, and that you have experiences that you faced in the past that you might have never thought you were going to, move through gracefully, but you found a way to do that. So keep that in mind. Transitions are going to be influenced by the age of your child, right? So each of you are moving through your own emotional metamorphosis. And it's going to be different, right, depending upon the age of your child. And I think, as Liz said, as a grandparent, right? Was there another grandparent? I forget. So adult children, right? It's going to be a different kind of transition for you, because they might they might be more able to make decisions and know what they need and want. Whereas when you've got someone that's younger, you're going to have to be more hands-on and more in charge. Depending upon the child's gender journey, if it's very clear, and someone like maybe Jeff, or who was it? Lorraine with a 7-year-old. These are children who are going to experience a very different journey than someone who might be coming out in middle school, someone who might be coming out in high school or college. The type of journey, whether it's a very clear and easy to understand, male to female, female to male, is different than a child who might be coming out as non-binary, and then maybe gender fluid, and then maybe moving over to transgender, right? So depending upon the type of gender journey, it might be one, transition moment where the clarity is there. For other families, it might be continually changing, right? Or ambiguous to some degree. Depending upon your child's sturdiness of mental health and emotional health, you're going to either be more or less impacted to shore up their needs, and that may take away from you taking care of your own needs, right? Um, your own mental health. Where were you before this happened? Maybe you were already in therapy. Maybe you were out of work or challenged financially or in a unhealthy partnership of some kind. So your sturdiness is also going to be impacted, or will impact how you move through this stage. The status of your family system, again, this would have to do with socioeconomic or partnership sturdiness, whether you're already taking care of other family members, whether you have children with special needs. You know, how much of you is there left to go around to tackle this transgender situation? Access to resources. We're, all in different spaces financially, and that may affect your child's um, uh, outlook on what they may or may not be able to have access to, right, in terms of affordability for medical procedures or even visits with doctors or new clothing for that matter. So you may be more or less challenged in your transition and maybe putting more or less pressure on yourself depending upon that factor. How about the culture that you are in? People who come from Asian cultures or people of color, depending upon your religion or the kinds of upbringing that you've had, um, that's going to impact your feeling of freedom to embrace your child, right? If you're being held back by cultural values or inputs from relatives who know better or don't want you stepping off the path that your family has always, been guided through. So again, I was with a client just the other day who was dealing with a sixth grader who had just come out and was very, very concerned because her parents, the mom's parents, were not accepting or understanding at all. She parents came from a completely different perspective. And this was putting a lot of pressure on this particular mom to be able to know what the right thing was to do for her child. Family supports, to this point, right? Do you have family that is on the same page with you, or are you having to educate, or are you being challenged by your very own family? Also consider whether or not you have any previous trauma in your background. This is going to influence your resiliency, right? The ability for you to not get hooked into other trauma experiences that might start to flare up when things kind of feel the same. That's sometimes what happens with past trauma is if we start to get in another situation that has similar um, uh, nuances or experiences, we can kind of connect to old wounds, and things can be much more difficult than they might if we hadn't had that previous trauma. So that's a lot to kind of think about in terms of orienting yourself, right? And your journey. I really want to focus on you right now, and kind of put your loved one over to the side for a minute. This slide talks a little bit about. Whoops, I'm trying to get this. There we go. Theoretical view of a family in transition, right? The first stage is discovery and disclosure. The family first acknowledges that their child has a unique gender identity. Oftentimes, they fall into some turmoil. The family tries to make sense of their child's gender difficulties. This is followed by a stage that they refer to as negotiation, where families might bargain around boundaries within which the transition should take place. I've seen this arise with families of young children, very young children, who are very concerned about whether this is just kind of the natural gender exploration that young children do, and or is this something that's more going to be more consistent, more pervasive, right, more persistent? And maybe the family's like, no, 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 you can play dress up at home, but you can't wear that skirt to school, right? Or you can't play with those toys when the friends come over. You only can do that in private. So some families will, kind of set up these boundaries, like who can know, who can't know. And in some cases, that's really not taking the transitioning person's best interests to heart. The
Absolutely.
family.
And we're
Okay.
seeing no notes, nothing. It's perfect.
Okay.
So
So this is,
it's what you wanted from the beginning.
yeah. Okay. So this is what I kind of just walked through. Sorry that you're having to catch up now with that. But the last step in this theoretical view is that parents are able to come to terms with the changes and allow the child to take the lead. And that's not always easy for families to get to that place. So if you're not following this exactly, that's okay. It's kind of a theoretical understanding that, family, the whole family goes through a transition. And what we want to talk about tonight is accepting your emotions, not talking about accepting your child, right? I'm talking about accepting your emotions. And I'm starting with this premise because for you to bifurcate how you feel or cut yourself off from the feelings or press them down and not acknowledge them is doing yourself immense harm. It's not healthy. And our emotions and our big feelings have a way of seeping out and making themselves known eventually. And generally, this happens in a way that's not healthy, not flattering, and sometimes can be very, very damaging to the people around you. So maybe if you're scratching your heads, you're wondering, well, how can I um, accept these feelings that I have, these big, emotions that I'm having, when they just kind of, want to just, pour out of me, and I'm with at work, or I'm with my kids, and I would do want to, acknowledge that having a therapist, coming to the PFLAG meetings, um, journaling. There's so many different ways that you can be with your emotions so that you can find a way to not have to be super emotive when you're with your gender diverse loved one. Um, so, as much as I say that I want you to accept them, I also want you to be cognizant of the ways that it can sometimes make the transgender loved one um, feel really uncomfortable, right? A lot of times I'll hear from teens that they're concerned about sharing things with their parents because when they come to their parents will start to get tearful or have a really hard time hearing what the child says. And it's interesting in adolescence, it's when children actually start to develop empathy, right? So if you have a child that's going through adolescence and they haven't really been empathetic up to this point, they might become really aware of how you're feeling just when you wish that they wouldn't be, right? Because they'll sometimes hold things back. And I also see this is something to just take note of. I sometimes see this as well with siblings of transgender loved ones, right? That the sibling might be having a lot of stuff going on for them, whether it's related to their siblings' transition or not. But knowing that mom and dad, or mom, whatever the parent dynamic is, are already challenged, right, with a transgender child's journey, the sibling might hold back on expressing their needs. So just kind of something to tuck away and make sure that you're also being available to all the kids. Um, so I talk about starting with acceptance. And what I'm talking about here is recognizing that you may originally have felt a lot of shock, right? If you were not expecting your child's gender declaration. That might have immediately been followed by confusion. What the heck am I going to do now? I don't have any understanding of this landscape. Um, some people also feel angry at their life, their easy, no, not that everyone's life is easy, but it was quote, kind of a normal life now has been upended with this transgender dynamic, right? And it's making things hard, right? And so anger is an emotion that I think a lot of males have an easier time expressing. Females are kind of socialized in many homes to not express anger, but it's a real feeling, and anger unexpressed leads to depression. So, for any of you that are feeling angry that you're in this situation, I want you to try to really be gentle with yourself and acknowledge and accept that it is okay to have those strong feelings. Some parents feel guilt. Sometimes they feel like they did something to bring this on, or they feel guilty that they didn't know sooner when they learned that their child's been struggling, or that their child's maybe been self harming or having thoughts of suicide. They can feel guilty that they, you know, didn't understand that that was happening, and that can be a really uncomfortable feeling. Shame tends to be another really big emotion, and it happens to be, very enduring. We might move from shock to confusion to anger to guilt, but shame is kind of like heavy and laden. And I really want us to understand that shame is there because of what our culture is telling us, right? There is nothing, in my opinion, in my studies, to say that transgender or non-binary identities are anything to be ashamed of. Anthropologists and archaeologists have studied the world over and understand that gender diversity and sexual diversity are themes that have been in cultures since they first were documented. So it's just the current culture that you might be living in that tends to think that it's something to be ashamed of, and we can see that very clearly even here in the in the United States, right? Depending what state you're in or what city you're in, you may be surrounded by people who are putting out more or less shameful statements about identities. Fear, again, on this topic right now of what's happening in our political climate and our cultures. When somebody comes out as transgender, what's the first thing parents will do, right? They'll get on the internet and start Googling, tell me, to learn about transgender identities. And if you do that today, you'll start to get a lot of links returned that might speak to what's happening in the school districts, in even in foreign lands, in states across the country, that bring back links to things that people can be very, very fearful of. So fear is enduring. And again, I'm going to just try to remind you, and I'm going to talk about how you can learn to do this. I want you to try to accept that feeling afraid is natural. It is very understandable why you might feel these feelings. And again, we don't like to have those emotions inhabit our experience through the day. But depending upon what's going on in your child's life and in your life, you might bounce around from these different feelings throughout the day. Loss is very enduring. There's lots of different kinds of loss. And disenfranchised grief, ambiguous loss. I'll talk a little bit about those if we have time. But there's a lot of things that people can feel grief over. And I just, again, want to just remind you that it's natural, and I want you to try to be very compassionate with yourself. Sometimes people can also be very resistant, very much in denial about what's happening with their child, and not want to believe that it's true, want to think that it might be a phase. In some cases, it is, right? When I sit down with the family the first time, and they're telling me the events that have led up to their coming to see me, there is no urine test to know if someone is transgender or not. But some identities, some presentations can lead parents to feel a little bit more skeptical than others, right? So some parents can be in kind of a place of denial, which, certainly the child might experience that as resistance or unacceptance. But I also want you to know, no matter where you are on your journey, that if you're feeling that, I understand. And it's not a reason for you not to come to our meetings. It's definitely a reason for you to come and move through all of these feelings at your own pace. Because some presentations are not what they seem, and they are temporary. And I've had clients who've even moved into hormone treatments and then later realized that this was not a journey that was right for them to continue. So there's a lot of different trajectories and a lot of different outcomes. So let's talk a bit about mindfulness. Whoops, not too fast there. Mindful. I love this slide because you can see over here on the left the person, right? All the bubbles coming out of this person's mind has all of this stuff going on, right? This is kind of how we move through our days with all of this stuff. But on this lovely walk on this sunny day, the dog is just thinking about the trees and the sunshine, right? So mindfulness is um, kind of comes out of the Buddhist teachings, and you don't have to understand anything about Buddhism, and you don't have to sit with your legs crossed in a quiet room with your fingers a certain way for a certain period of time to be able to practice mindfulness. I remember when I first learned about mindfulness or meditation, I thought that the whole goal was to try to have this empty mind, right? Like this, like the dog has. And in fact, what I've come to find most helpful is that my mindfulness practice has helped me to become more aware of what is actually going on in my mind at any given time, right? And that is one of the things that I really want to stress. And that's my strongest invitation for you to take away from tonight's talk is this ability for you to learn how to be present when the big emotions start to come up, and to be able to name it, right? It's really a muscle that you can develop, just like you build muscles in your arms or legs. You can start to build this mindfulness muscle, and um, a process that I want to introduce here today. So jot this name down: Tara Brach. Tara Brach is one of my most revered teachers of mindfulness practice. She has wonderful podcasts. She's written tremendously easy to read and understand and soulful, compassionate books about mindfulness. And I love this idea of helping you to stop being so hard on yourself, right? So RAIN is the acronym. And so thinking about this muscle that you're going to build, you're going to notice, and I use the idea of a drone, right? Almost like a drone flying over the top of your head, just kind of like stationary, looking down, taking it all in. I want you to recognize from the drone's eye view, right? From that perspective outside of yourself, I want you to recognize what's going on, right? Maybe you got a call from your high school student's counselor to inform you that they've just learned from a friend that your child is self-harming. And you just take this call, right? And you're in your kitchen, you know, turning off your cell phone, and you're flooded with fear. You're maybe flooded with a little anger that your child is, you know, doing this and you didn't know about it, like keeping the secret from you. And so in this drone eyes view, right, you're going to just kind of sit with all of this and notice it, right? You might notice your stomach tensing up. You might notice, that, you want to make an animal sound, or anyway, all of the things that will come around on you in that difficult moment is what I want you to notice what's going on. And now here's where the A comes in, right? Allowing that experience to be there just as it is. wow. And this could be even a narration that you have with yourself. Wow, you are really freaking out right now, Linda. That was a really difficult call to get. You're scared, you're angry, you're, concerned. You're, right frightened about what this, what you're going to see, right? When you look at your child's arm when they get home from school to see where the cutting's been going on, right? So you're just going to allow that without any judgment, without any criticism or haste. And then you're going to move into this place of investigation, right? The eye is going to be where you kind of start to wonder, like, about these big feelings that you're having. Like, well, yeah, it makes sense that I would be upset about this cutting, because I thought we were on a good track and that we moved past this hard stuff. And now, yeah, this is why I'm having these big feelings, because um, I knew that she was cutting before, but I thought that was past us, right? So you're investigating, kind of doing your own understanding of why the big feelings are happening for you. And then N is really this awareness that comes from not identifying with this experience, right? Keeping it separate and not getting engulfed by it. And that's what I like about the idea of the drone, is that you can kind of like see yourself outside of yourself. And it allows you then to have this compassion for yourself and to see yourself struggling and to be able to maybe offer yourself some kind words. I like to create a space in that moment. And I ask myself, what can I do right now that serves my highest good? Right? Maybe it's calling a friend. Maybe it's going back to bed and taking a nap. Maybe it's a walk. Maybe it's a prayer. Maybe it's a journal page. But I like to be able to ask myself again, what is it that I can do in this moment that serves my highest good? Maybe it's researching about self harm. I don't know if you're feeling, ignorant on the particular topic. So this rain idea, Tara Brach, wonderful tools to help you through those big feelings. This is my outdated drone picture here. And also, kind of, I mentioned, if you heard my narrative there about feeling what you're feeling in your body. Um, Oftentimes we end up kind of cutting off our feelings from our body. And what can be very helpful in times of high stress is exercise, right? Because our body a lot of times will go into fight or flight mode, and we excrete high levels of cortisol and epinephrine and things that like speed up our system and get us ready to either run away from the threat or to fight against the threat. And so understanding what's happening in your body can be really helpful. Sometimes discharging that energy with a walk or some kind of exercise can be really helpful. And this is something that I think a lot of people don't recognize when people will say, gosh, I was feeling this particular way or that way. They forget that our emotions follow our thoughts. Our brain has a thought. And if the thought is like a really scary thought, using this example of learning that your child is self-harming, the brain is going to excrete, like I said, these fight or flight hormones, right? If you're feeling like, I'm so relaxed, I'm ready to just like um, pull up a pillow on the couch and turn on my favorite show. I'm really relaxed, and you're feeling really good about things. You might realize, well, yeah, that's because I was just thinking about how it was the end of my day. I'd been really successful today. I knew that I didn't have any hard challenges tonight. So my body was able to go into this relaxed state. So whether it's a difficult emotion that we're feeling or a pleasant emotion that we're feeling, our emotions follow the thoughts that we have. So, one of the things that I like to share with clients is if they say, "Oh, yeah, I was feeling this particular way," I'll ask, "Well, what were you thinking about? What was going on in your mind during that time?" And if you can start to become, again, this is that mindful part, right? To be able to catch the thoughts that are happening in your mind, um, then you can have an opportunity to start to change that narrative or to maybe challenge the thought. Maybe the thought really is a catastrophic thought and really doesn't fit the situation at all, right? And it's got you all geared up to be super stressed or, worried about the worst thing. So, again, going back to my understanding when I was first learning about meditation, was it's not about having a blank, empty mind. It's about being aware of what the thought is that's in your mind. And it's almost like trains leaving Grand Central Station, right? It's like you have a thought and you go, oh, I was just thinking about this. And then you try to come back to the breath. And then all of a sudden another thought comes in your mind. Oh, I'm having a thought about that. And it leaves the station. And you come back to your mind, to your breath, right? And so being able to develop a practice where you're able to know what your thoughts are, right, is really about being mindful of what's going on and then reminding yourself that you are the person that gets to be in charge of those thoughts. And I use the kind of a metaphor of a radio station, or right, that you can actually, if you don't like the thoughts that are going on in your mind, it's really within your power to change the station, to change the narrative. This too shall pass, right? Thoughts really exist on a continuum. When you feel overwhelmed, name the emotion and experience the feeling as waves, right? They're going to come and they're going to go. They're not going to be there forever. It's really like a wave. And you can even be aware, like, wow, this morning when that happened, I was really upset. But actually, after I took that walk and I called my friend and I settled down, it was kind of like that big wave going back out to sea. Your thoughts are only as powerful as the power that you give them. Sometimes we forget that we really are in charge of our mind and our thoughts. We can sometimes just feel engulfed by them and forget that we can kind of separate ourselves um, and make choices about what we want to focus on. And it is something that gets easier over time. So, what I want to do now is I want to have you, I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. I want to have you do a quick little meditation of your own. I'm going to kind of guide you through something so that you can discover your own safe haven. And this, I hope, will be something that you can take away from tonight and use in the future. So, what we'll do is start by taking a couple of really deep breaths. I want you to pull the air down all the way into your belly and blow it out through your mouth. These are kind of clearing breaths, right? Like big in through your nose, out through your mouth. Just do that a couple of times. And something that I learned, and something that you can keep in mind, if you're able to breathing in and as you breathe out, have the out breath last a couple seconds longer than the in breath. If you do that a few different times, you actually change you signal to your nervous system that you are relaxing. You can really bring this on for yourself just by holding that out breath a few seconds longer. Because in normal breath, it's kind of an easy, they're equal paced, but to hold that out breath signals that you don't need to be breathing in so much air right now, that you're ready to relax. And I don't think my kitty cat wants to be here for this part. So say goodbye to Oliver. So, sitting comfortably now, I want you to rest your hands maybe on the top of your thighs. You can close your eyes if you're comfortable, or cast your gaze down towards your lap or to the floor. And as you continue to breathe, I want you to bring your attention to your body. You can notice your body seated, feeling the weight of your body on the chair, from the back of your thighs. You can feel the chair on the back of your back. You can feel your feet on the floor. As you take a deep breath, you bring in more oxygen, maybe kind of even feeling it into the back part of your chest cavity, livening your body. As you exhale, I want you to have a sense of relaxing more deeply. You may even notice that your mind is starting to wander, and that's okay. Just try to bring it back to your breathing. Notice the sensation of your feet touching the floor or touching your shoes, the weight and pressure. Maybe you feel a vibration or some temperature, some heat or some cold. Again, noticing your legs against the chair, whether there's pressure, pulsing, any heaviness or lightness. Feel the chair rise up to meet and support your back. Now bring your attention into your stomach area. Notice if your stomach is tense or tight. If it is, let it soften. Take a breath and notice your hands. Are your hands tense or tight? Maybe turn your hands over so your palms face upward. Feel any energy that's emanating from your palms. Notice your arms. Maybe you feel a wisp of air on your arms. Any sensations in your arms? Moving up to your shoulders, see if you can let your shoulders be soft. Notice your neck and throat. Let them be soft, relaxed. Soften your jaw, maybe wiggle it around a little bit. Let your face and facial muscles be soft. And notice how your whole body maybe is more present now that you've kind of connected with each part. And feel the air moving through your nostrils. And be aware of your whole body as best you can. And now I want you to think of a place in your life where you have felt safe. It may be a place you remember from your childhood. It could be your house that you grew up in, or someone else's house, a place where you might have played or visited. Just from your childhood, if you can think of a place, a tree house, a schoolyard, a park, a place where you felt safe. And then also, nothing's coming up for you there. Maybe we move to a place that you found relaxation as an adult. Maybe it's a special place that you like to vacation, a relative's home, or maybe a place inside your own home now, or maybe somewhere outside your home. If you're having any difficulty recalling a place, then I want you to feel free to create a special safe place right now in your mind. A scene where you can imagine feeling great calm and relaxation. Might be a place that you fantasize about, some kind of a vacation spot, or a room in a home that you want to have someday. And as you're holding this image in your mind, I want you to try to see yourself in that scene. If it's a memory, I want you to think back. How old are you in that memory? See if you can remember what you might have been wearing. And notice as many details of the place as you can. The colors, the shapes, the textures, the smells. I sometimes will reflect on a smell of a musty basement of a relative's house where I used to play. Sometimes when I smell that smell, it takes me right back there. See if you're outside, can you feel the weather? Can you smell the trees or the flowers if you're outside? Or maybe you're smelling something cooking in a house. Now let's see if you can hear any of the sounds that fill that place. If you can experience yourself in that safe place with the smells and the sounds. I want you to try to breathe it in, breathing in the calm and the stillness and the safety. And now let's see if we might come back and join each other on the Zoom. Hopefully that's been a positive experience for you to find a place that can be your safe haven, a place that you can conjure up in those moments of real difficulty, right? If something were to happen with your child and you're starting to really feel dysregulated and um, full of big emotions, I want you to remember that there's always this place that you can go to, right? You might not be able to reach a friend or a partner or a loved one, but you can take yourself back to your safe space.